Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor. Today I am beginning a playthrough of another game, and the game this time around is going to be Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. This happens to be a game that I grew up playing, and it brought me a lot of entertainment back when it originally came out in 1999. So I was really happy to hear that it got a remaster and it was released back in December 2024. Now I am looking forward to releasing a series of videos on this updated version of the game, which I guess simultaneously makes this game the newest and the oldest one that I have played for this channel. I have already been releasing some Soul Reaver videos in preparation for this playthrough series. Those were covering the locations of optional items like glyphs, health artifacts, and mana artifacts. Since I am mostly just going to be focusing on the main story elements in this playthrough, you likely will not see me getting those optional items outside of their specific videos. I will add links to those dedicated videos in the description, just in case anyone needs to know where those items are. Oh, it is also worth mentioning that Soul Reaver is actually the second game released in the Legacy of Kain franchise. Even though this is a sequel, it is quite different from the previous game. Even the few returning characters are barely in this game, so I don't think you have to be too worried about being confused about missing details. I think the story of Soul Reaver stands on its own just fine without there being any prior knowledge. I am also saying that as a person who played Soul Reaver long before I played Blood Omen. I think if you played Blood Omen, it does enhance a few references, but it is not required to follow Soul Reaver's main story. Putting it simply, the plot of this game is going to be a tale of revenge. Those usually aren't too complicated and they are pretty easy to enjoy. Just go ahead and throw in some vampires, some vengeful spirits, and the late great voice of Tony J, and we have ourselves a game. I think that's going to be enough build up from me. I'll go ahead and let the opening cinematic set the tone for the entire story. I do not normally talk during the cutscenes of a game, so I'll go ahead and go quiet until that opening cinematic is over.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, and burn forever in the bowels of the Lake of the Dead. Cast him in. Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Raziel, you are worthy. I know you, Raziel. You are worthy.
What madness is this? What pitiful form is this that I have come to inhabit? Death would be a release next to this travesty.
You did not survive the abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
The choice is not yours.
I am destroyed.
You are reborn. The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. It is this soul that animates the corpse you lived in. And that, Raziel, is the demise of Nosgoth. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies. Redeem yourself. Or if you prefer, avenge yourself. Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again. Use your hatred to reave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my soul reaver, my angel of death.
Even after all this time, that opening cutscene is amazing. And it looks like they redid it. Like, the old one was really good too, but it's nice to see the remaster giving that cutscene some love. And I already said it earlier, but Tony J's voice as the Elder God is fantastic. And alright, I'm now in control of Raziel. I'm just going into the game options, turning off a bunch of hints, that way there's not a bunch of stuff popping up on the screen. After this, though, I am going to have to go through a bunch of rapid-fire tutorial cutscenes.
These gates twist space, laying a path across great spans.
As we navigate the Underworld, they kind of front-load the game with those, but after we manage to escape, we are going to be able to space out those cutscenes a little bit more. For now, though, I am just going to have to get through all the walk this way, jump this way, fight this way tutorials. But the big object that I just interacted with is going to be a warp gate. That is this game's way of quick traveling across the map. It's not super important this early in the game, but it will be saving me some time later on.
You are weak. You must feed.
The old hunger has left me. I have no desire for blood.
You are changed. Your bloodthirst is replaced by a deeper need. You have become a devourer of souls. To sustain your strength, you must hunt the lost spirits of the Underworld and consume the souls of your enemies.
Alright, now I just need to fully heal in order to get out of this area. While I'm having Raziel take care of that, it is mention-worthy that I can shift between the old graphics and the new graphics. I'll be using the new ones going forward though, it just looks a lot better. And the only reason I'm thinking of that right now is because Raziel is feeding. And while Raziel is feeding, if I were to rotate the camera, you can clearly see that he has lost the lower half of his jaw. Whereas with the old graphics, that was a little bit harder to see. And I just thought that was kind of nifty. After getting fully healed, Raziel has to pass the jumping tutorial, which is pretty short.
Your wings, though ruined, are not without purpose. Take hold of them as you leap, and they will carry you across this chasm.
Alright, let's go ahead and pass the gliding tutorial. Then all we have to do is do 2 different combat tutorials and one that covers how to shift into the material realm. So yeah, not too much more before we actually get into the real game.
What scabrous wretches are these?
Slua, the scavengers of the Underworld. Their feral hunger has claimed countless souls, spirits who now shall never find their rest.
Okay, time for combat tutorial number 1 versus the Slua. These guys are not that difficult whatsoever. In fact, once they start to get really weak, they'll just run away from you, which can be a little bit annoying since I have to chase after them because I have to kill them and devour their souls in order to get out of this pit. Otherwise, the barrier will not go away. But outside of being a little bit annoying, these guys really aren't so bad. But I do recall in the past defeating them, then they become transparent to where you can devour their souls, and I was like, okay, cool. I won the fight, I can leave now. But no, the area does not let you leave unless you devour their souls, regardless if you need the health or not.
These portals are your conduit between the spectral and material realms. With their aid, you may gather matter and will yourself to become manifest in the physical world. This is taxing, however. Your strength must first be fully restored. You require no conduit to return to this plane. You may abandon your physical body at any time. Sustain your strength to prolong your manifestation in the physical world. If you fail to feed or absorb too many wounds, this fragile matter will dissolve.
Okay, we have finally escaped the Underworld, and back in the material realm in the background, we can see a large gate. Make note of that because we will be returning here after beating the very first boss of the game.
You are young yet, Raziel. You still retain many of your vampiric weaknesses. Immersion in water, while not fatal, will dissolve your physical body, forcing your return to the spirit world. Be aware that in the spectral realm, water has neither heft nor lift. It stands as thin as air.
For now, I need to make it back to the Sanctuary of the Clans, the same place where Kain ripped off Raziel's wings in that cutscene. We are not going to be able to do too much there because there's a different destination we need to go to immediately after it, but we'll cover that whenever the cutscene talks about it.
What are these creatures?
Do you not recognize them? They are the children of your brother, Duma.
That's impossible. These foul-scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood?
Do you suppose that time stood still for you, Raziel? Much has changed since you passed from the world of men.
I knew my opponent's weaknesses, having suffered them myself. Physical wounds are fleeting. A vampire's immortal flesh begins to close as soon as it is cleaved. Vampires need only fear those wounds that impale or inflame. Water scorches like acid, and fledglings are devastated by sunlight's touch. I would have to modify my tactics to suit my foes.
Whenever it comes to the first two vampire encounters, these guys are not the most clever. My usual move is to run directly into the sunlight and let them chase after me, and you'd be surprised how often they set themselves on fire by running into the sunlight after you.
Unfettered from the flesh, a creature's soul fades swiftly into the spectral realm. Draw it in quickly, Raziel, or you will be compelled to follow.
I don't know why they suddenly forget that they are combustible, but whenever they commit to that terrible decision, this fight can be over very quickly. In order to speed things along a little bit though, I go ahead and fight the vampires. I throw one into the sunlight and then I throw the other one onto the stake on the wall, that way it is impaled.
Your physical prowess surpasses what you knew in life. Even massive obstacles can be moved effortlessly.
And now to become accustomed to a very common sight in this game, which is going to be Raziel moving around a gigantic stone block. Now I really enjoy this game, but one thing they overuse just a little bit are the block puzzles. Raziel will very frequently find himself in a situation where something is just out of his jumping range and he has to go arrange a bunch of blocks in order to jump on those and then reach a ledge of some kind. Other times, the blocks act like keys and you have to shove them into walls, that way something unusual unlocks like a door or a secret passageway. Just all kinds of crazy things, but beyond this door is going to be the Sanctuary of the Clans.
My God! The Sanctuary of the Clans, reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence. And yet, I had only just emerged. In the instant between my execution and resurrection, centuries had apparently passed.
cataclysms, the Earth strains to shrug off the pestilence of Kain's parasitic empire. The fate of this world was preordained in an instant by a solitary man. Unwilling to martyr himself to restore Nosgoth's balance, Kain condemned the world to the decay you see. In that moment, the unraveling began. Now it is nearly played out. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of collapse. Its fragile balance cannot hold.
So yeah, once upon a time, Kain could have sacrificed himself to save the world. Instead, he decided to rule it, and it has been falling apart ever since. And we need to confront him within the Sanctuary of the Clans, but there's not really a way of getting inside of there, at least not yet. So instead, Raziel needs to continue his trip down memory lane and make his way down the path to the Lake of the Dead. Nothing quite like visiting the place where you died. I'm sure he's going to be loving that. And I do have Raziel take just a moment to kill off some of these easy vampires just outside of the sanctuary. They are easy because most of them are unaware of Raziel's presence, which, as you may have just seen a moment ago, if they are unaware that Raziel is there, he can throw a spear at them and it will kill them instantly. Although I did screw up and not devour the soul of the first vampire, so whenever I got my spear back, he just came back to life, so I am going to have to do a little bit better than that going forward, but still, overall not a very challenging group of vampires. After I get Raziel beyond the Lake of the Dead, though, I'm not going to really take as much time to kill off every single vampire that I encounter. The only reason I was doing it here was because these vampires are really easy to dispose of. But after I get a little bit further into the game, I'm not going to be able to sneak up on every single vampire, so instead I'm probably going to resort to just running by a lot of them. That way I'm not wasting any time fighting them that I really don't need to. Not to worry though, there are still going to be plenty of fights ahead. So it is not like I am going to be running away from every single encounter that comes up. The game definitely does not allow for that to happen at certain points, so Raziel is not going to be a pacifist forever. Especially considering in the early game Raziel's health is constantly depleting. There will be a means to eventually stop that, so I'm not having to feed as often, but for right now it's very important that I do occasionally kill some vampires. And okay, I went ahead and I activated the warp gate room for the Lake of the Dead, that way I can always quick travel here later on in the game, which this area in general is how I reach a bunch of different regions in this game, so yeah, this is going to be one of the more frequently used warp gate rooms. Oh, and as you just saw, the vampires will respawn whenever you come back to this area after being gone for a little while.
This, at least, had remained constant. The endlessly swirling vortex of the abyss, my tomb, and the womb of my rebirth. Though much of Nosgoth's landscape had changed, these cliffs gave me my bearings. My clan territory was to the west. I was anxious to see how my descendants had fared during the centuries of my absence.
Yeah, I get the feeling that after their leader was executed for what was basically being a traitor, that the rest of the clan probably did not fare too greatly, but let's go ahead and go find out. Maybe I'm wrong and Raziel gets one gigantic welcome home party. Who knows? I'm just gonna go ahead and avoid this vampire and let him live in this hallway for the rest of his unlife and then press on to the actual territory. I mean, this is kind of a welcome home party. And I think these two vampires from Dumas' clan are the only ones that you are required to fight within Raziel's territory. After that, I'm pretty sure you can skip all of the others. But yeah, this kind of confirms what I already was assuming, and that would be that after Raziel was executed, there would be a huge power struggle to try and acquire his lost territory. And considering it's Dumas' vampires that are here, I'm guessing he's the one that got to acquire it. And we have one vampire down, but unfortunately I was a little bit slow devouring its soul and I got interrupted by the other vampire, so that means that spear is going to stay inside the other vampire so he does not resurrect and it turns into a 2 against 1 again. Instead, I just have to beat the crap out of the other vampire using Raziel's bare claws, and slowly but surely grab him and throw him into position to be executed by something else. And what I'm shooting for here as I slowly get him into position is I want to be able to throw him into the fire. Then I can heal up and get some of my life back after taking some damage in this fight and then press on to the optional vampires from here.
I knew the hand that wrought this deed.
And we have a couple of vampires hiding behind the pillars over here. And Raziel is coming to terms with the fact that if you are murdered by your ruler and viewed as a traitor, it is probably safe to bet that there are not going to be very good things happening to your people that were still living in your territory following your death. In this case, Raziel's clan got the genocide treatment and the squatters from Dumas' clan are now residing here. Other than this really jarring moment for Raziel, there's not really a big reason to be in his territory. It kind of just acts like a pit stop for us. We are only passing through to eventually reach the real destination. One of the very few useful things that we are going to be getting inside of Raziel's old territory is going to be another warp gate room, and that's going to allow us to fast travel here in the future if we ever really need to, which I don't really think there's going to be too big of a reason to, but it's still good to have that option. Generally speaking, though, I'm going to want to transport myself to the Lake of the Dead instead of Raziel's territory, but still it is good to have, especially if you do eventually want to go after the optional items in this area. Even later on in the game, there's nothing really story relevant in this territory. At most, you can return here for some optional items, but that's about it. And there is nothing in this area right now that I can acquire without getting some additional abilities first. So I am just going to pass through here as quickly as possible so I can begin exploring Melchiah's Necropolis. And what in the Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motion is happening here? You know what, not important, let's go ahead and get out of here. So some of Raziel's territory is underwater, as we can see in the next room on the left-hand side. Water still kills Raziel at the moment, and going into the spectral realm, you'll find there's not really anything down there if you were to explore it, so don't worry about that too much right now. We want to keep pressing on in the other direction, which will eventually lead us to a tower. But this path is also going to lead us to some additional vampires, and even though I said earlier that I was going to try avoiding as many of these vampires as I could because they are all optional kills, and really they just respawn whenever you leave the area anyway, kind of making them pointless to kill because they waste time, and I still find myself killing quite a few of them. Admittedly, I was just kind of having some fun with that, but also I do need to maintain Raziel's health since it continuously depletes this early in the game. But I do try to vary it up just a little bit because I got rid of the very first spear of the game against those two vampires that ambushed Raziel within his own territory. Then I picked up another one that kind of looks like a pitchfork and I used it on the smaller of the two vampires around here. And then I remembered there was a torch on the wall in this area as well, so I made use of it and I caught a vampire on fire, so at least I am trying a few different weapons. Granted, they don't come in the greatest variety in this game, but I'm making use of as many of them as I can. I'm having a pretty good time doing it. And okay, getting back to the main objective, somewhere in this little courtyard area, we are going to find the tower that I was referencing a little bit earlier. And that is the location I need to be in order to get out of this territory. And within that tower, we're going to see a lever and a dial in the middle of the room. That dial will not be important right now, but if you were going after optional items, you would eventually need to find a way to move that. That would open up a bunch of different areas of the territory for you. If you were to move it and then pull that lever, it would lower the bridge facing that direction. But since Raziel does not have a way of moving that dial right now, we are forced to just pull the lever and then lower the bridge in the default direction it's already facing. Which is fine, that's all I need it to do at the moment, and then I am free to move on to Melchiah's Necropolis. And as that name would imply, most of Melchiah's territory is going to be very cemetery-themed or very tomb-themed.
No! Please!
I didn't recognize these flayed racks of flesh. Their scent was vampiric. They gnawed upon their victim's carcass like dogs.
Alright, welcome to the Necropolis, the region that we are going to be exploring for a while, which includes some new enemy types. The obvious ones are going to be the decomposing ghoul vampires that can tunnel underground and ambush you. There's also going to be a random human vampire hunter around here, but I am going to be ignoring him.
This charnel house bore the unmistakable marks of Melchiah's clan. To what depths had our dynasty plummeted if these ghouls were the descendants of my high-born brother? Were they so debased as to recruit fledglings from the desiccated corpses here interred?
I am just going to go ahead and pick up a new staff spear-like weapon over here that is specific to this area. Then I'm going to try and avoid that ghoul vampire, which does not go great for me considering he tunnels underground and ambushes me. That's alright though, just a slight distraction, and while I'm being distracted by that, I'll go ahead and explain that I do not kill the human vampire hunter because if you spare the humans and only kill the vampires, eventually the humans will be worshipping Raziel, and you just have one less enemy type to deal with. And in certain areas, if you are going after optional items, that makes the process a little bit easier. That is not really going to come into play here in the main storyline, but I'll go ahead and spare the vampire hunter and have the people worshipping Raziel all the same.
My brother Melchiah was made last, and therefore received the poorest portion of Kain's gift. Although immortal, his soul could not sustain the flesh, which retained much of its previous human frailty. This weakness, it seemed, was passed on to his offspring. Their fragile skins barely contained the underlying decay.
This region is where Raziel is eventually going to find the very first boss of the game, but it's going to take a little bit of effort getting to him. You can already kind of see this unfolding as Raziel was moving around that block in order to reach the upper portion of this area. That way he can progress into a warp gate room and then access the rest of the Necropolis. But yeah, there are going to be a good amount of puzzles that we need to solve before we can face off against that boss, and that is going to be the main theme of this game. Now, how did I miss that throw? Oh well, it doesn't matter. While there definitely is combat involved, I don't really consider that the focus. I would much more consider the puzzle solving the majority of the game. Like not 100% of the game, but pretty close. And before facing off in any major battle, you're going to have to do a considerable amount of problem solving first. Fortunately, I have played through this game before, so I should not be getting stuck on any of those puzzles. And I should make decent enough time getting through all the puzzles. Now, I'm not saying I won't make some mistakes along the way, since I've only partially played through the remaster prior to now, but I shouldn't be getting completely stumped either. And while I continue to make progress into the Necropolis heading over to the Necropolis Pond, the main reason I did not complete the remastered version of the game prior to now is because, well, my previous playthrough ended up with something of a soft lock scenario. Towards the very end of the game, there was a block puzzle that needed to be solved that required you to knock some blocks off of some ledges, and then arrange them on the ground below in a specific order so they made something of a diagram. The weird thing that happened to me though was that one of the blocks I shoved off of a ledge landed on top of another block. And rather than having those two blocks stack on top of each other, which is what would normally happen, instead it fell through. So both blocks were occupying the exact same space. And as a result, there was no way I could separate the blocks. I also just couldn't move the blocks in general because of this little situation. So I was like, okay, this is a glitch, I'll go ahead and save and reload the game and hopefully everything just respawns back to normal. Well, as hopeful as I was, it did not work out that way. Both of the blocks were still occupying the same space, and because I saved the game, I was locked. I could not progress any further.
Beware, Raziel. These wraiths are vampire spirits, fettered too long in the spectral realm. When their vampire natures adapt to this plane, they become eaters of souls. Do not allow these spirits to re-inhabit their corpses.
Okay, yeah, now there are going to be wraiths in the spectral realm, and I went into the spectral realm a little bit too early here because there is just a random dead vampire body in the material world. Well, I mean a non-moving kind of dead vampire, so deader, I guess. And that was supposed to be your clue. Something was not quite right, so that whenever you went to the spectral realm after seeing that body, you get the sudden reveal that the dead vampire that you saw, its soul turned into this wraith. But back to what I was saying earlier, this is going to be my second attempt at beating this game because I got soft blocked previously. And even though I was like maybe 10 minutes away from beating the entire game, I had to start all over again. And I figured if I needed to start all the way over again anyway, I may as well start recording. So here we are, attempt number 2 at trying to beat this game. And I am turning that into the recorded playthrough that I eventually upload. So okay, I took way more damage from the wraith than I was expecting. Devouring its soul did not entirely heal Raziel, and neither did the spare soul that was just kind of hanging around in here. And there weren't any more for him to devour, but fortunately just being in the spectral realm progressively heals Raziel. So all I had to do was just wait a little bit longer and then I'd be back at full health. And then back to the material realm. Yeah, I was not expecting that guy to give me as much trouble as he did. I definitely did not want to reset this early in the game. I mean, that would be kind of funny, but I'd rather it not be that kind of video. I would like for the playthrough to be a little bit more smooth than that. And alright, I kind of mentioned this earlier in the video, but now I get to use a block as a key to unlock a gate. I just have to shove it into a hole in the wall and then it opens up. And alright, from here I just have to do a balancing puzzle. I hop up onto a beam and... okay... That's not right. There should be 2 platforms here. Okay. And you should be able to jump on one and raise the other. And if I do that, it still isn't there. Okay. Saving the game and quitting and reloading, and hopefully it just shows up after I reload the game. Give me one moment, because I am going to need to backtrack all the way back here after reloading the game, and I will just go ahead and cut to that point. So, okay, the reason why there only being one platform is such a big problem is because you need both in order to progress. Like in the material world, you need to jump on one of the platforms, it does not matter which. Your weight is going to carry down the platform that you land on, but that's going to cause the scale to turn so the other platform raises up. Then you can go back up to that beam and shift into the spectral realm, and since weight and gravity is not really a thing there, you can then jump on top of the raised platform and it will not lower. And then you can use that newfound height to reach the ledge on the opposite side of the room. But if there's only one platform, the scale puzzle does not work correctly and we are kind of stuck, so I may end up being soft locked for a second playthrough in a row here. And alright, moment of truth. Is there going to be a second platform for us to jump onto? And the answer is... no. No, there is not. Alright, is there any other way I can get around this problem? You know what? I'll even try jumping on it just to make sure it's not just invisible and we can still use it. And nope. Alrighty then, I guess I get to start the game all over again. I'm not going to make you watch every single step a second time though. Instead, I'm going to play through the game. I'm going to skip every single cutscene. And the moment I get back to this point where I'm at this exact same puzzle, that's where you're going to see me pick up the game again. I'll be right back. And alright, I'm back in the same room where that same puzzle takes place. I was able to get back here in about 10 minutes, probably less. You can actually fly through the game if you're just skipping the cutscenes. And yeah, I could have just left this glitch out of the video and shown the playthrough that worked out properly for me from start to finish, but I felt like this really weird experience needed to be shown. It was pretty unusual having 2 different issues lock my progress on back-to-back playthroughs, so I mean I felt like showing that off a little bit. But yeah, I'm back at the platform scales, and sure enough, this is what it's supposed to look like. There are 2 scales for me to jump onto. No more being stuck, I am able to progress as the game intended, and we are going to finally make some progress and get closer to that first boss of the game. And now that I have managed to raise that scale and get that platform up high again, I need to escape this room with a pit inside of it, that way I can shift back into the spectral realm and use the weightlessness of that scale to get across the room. In order to do that though, I need to open up the gate that is inside this room, and I'm going to be doing it the exact same way that I opened the previous gate. Getting a block all the way in position, that way I can shove it into a hole in the wall, it acts like a key, and then the gate opens up. So in order to get the block into place, I need to shove it inside of the pit, and then drag it across that pit so I can lift it up onto a staircase and progressively take it one step at a time, until eventually the block is in front of the hole, and then we can go ahead and use it as a key. Now inside of the pit there are going to be some of Melchiah's decaying ghoul vampires. And you may notice some piles of dirt on the ground. Those are an indication that the vampires are going to continue to spawn throughout your time inside of that pit, so you're not going to want to stay in there any longer than necessary. In order to dispose of these vampires, I go ahead and I take the staff that was impaled inside of one of the vampires out. That causes it to come back to life because, kind of similar to what we saw earlier, their souls linger around, and whenever you remove weapons from them, well, they kind of resurrect and they have that soul-eating ability. Regardless though, I was in need of a weapon so I could kill these things permanently, though I temporarily settled for a 2 versus 1 scenario until both of them were dead. Then I got back to moving that block only to be attacked immediately by another vampire that spawned inside of the pit. And that continued being a risk the entire time I was moving the block until I eventually got onto the staircase with it and managed to avoid the last of the spawning vampires. And now that we have it out of the pit and up the staircase, I'm able to open up the gate, and now I can go back into the spectral realm, get back all the way on top of this little room area, and then use the raised platform to get out of here. And even though the puzzle took me just a moment to get knocked out, well, there are going to be more, so get ready for that. Like I said earlier, get very used to Raziel having to solve a bunch of block puzzles because this game has a bunch of them. And alright, I'm back on the top level now, and everybody check this out. It's amazing what happens when everything loads in the game properly. I go ahead and I have Raziel glide over to the platform, and it works as intended. Truly incredible. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get over to the rift and get back to the material realm. And then we are going to have one more block puzzle before we can finally leave this cursed little area that I've now had to go back to on 2 separate playthroughs. And then with all of that effort on 2 separate playthroughs just to get through here one time. So this block puzzle is going to be slightly different. And the only thing different about it is that the blocks are going to have some symbols on them. And if you were to look inside the holes that we need to shove the blocks into, there is going to be the exact same symbol. So you need to flip the blocks and make sure the symbol lines up exactly. And once you have those matching, whenever you shove the block into the hole, they are going to again act like keys and the gate is going to open. Then finally, Raziel will have his freedom from this cursed room and we are able to press on to some new areas of the Necropolis. The first area is just a little mountainside platform that's going to have a block on it. So again, we need to use those blocks, we need to shove it off the ledge. And then we return back to the Necropolis pond where we are going to find another block to stack it on top of. With those two stacked on top of each other and placed in the right location, they are just high enough for Raziel to jump on top of them, and then jump again and be able to reach a new platform that was hidden just out of sight. That gives us a new mountainside path that takes us to the other side of the Necropolis pond. I say the other side because there is an underwater tunnel that actually connects these two locations. But here on the more northern side of the Necropolis pond, there's going to be a building that we can enter. Raziel just needs to circle the pond, and eventually on the other side of it we are going to see that building being guarded by a couple of vampires. I don't fight any of them, I just keep on pressing to that location. Then I go through the door of that building only to find that there are 2 more vampires waiting for me on the other side. Fortunately, I picked up a spear in order to make it a little bit easier if I need to face off against any of them. I go ahead and take care of one of the vampires inside that building so I can fully heal. But this building is going to house all the remaining puzzles that we need to do in order to face off against the first boss. Going up this walkway, there is going to be a room with a large platform in the center. That platform is actually going to be an elevator, but it is not operational right now. If you were to pull the lever nearest to that platform, nothing is going to happen. Raziel needs to flip the switch to the much smaller elevator behind that platform. And despite this whole area having an old, decrepit cemetery and mausoleum theme up to this point, there is going to be a good amount of machinery in this building. And there is going to be a room where we need to tinker around with some of that machinery. Along the way, I will have Raziel spear an unsuspecting vampire. This is unnecessary because I have barely lost any health, but I want to make sure I am keeping myself as close to full health as I can for the upcoming battle. Going through the door at the top of the ramp behind the vampires takes me into the room that I want to be in where the machinery is that I need to work with. There are going to be 3 massive gears or cogs in the middle of that room, but one of them is not making contact with the others. Because of that, rotating the lever on the wall won't do anything until Raziel fixes this problem. Instead of rotating that lever, directly across the room from it is going to be a switch. We need to go over there, and if we flip that switch, the detached cog will connect with the others. At that point is when we need to rotate the lever, and then the elevator should regain functionality. And with that out of the way, it is now time to return back to the large platform room. I end up leaving the exact same way that I entered and avoiding the one vampire remaining at the very bottom of the ramp. There are actually 2 different paths and doors connecting to the machine room. The one I took has the vampires as the enemy in that direction, And humans are going to be the enemy in the other direction. And I would like to try avoiding the humans so I don't end up killing any of them so they eventually do not view Raziel as a threat. Now the lever by the large platform will lower it like an elevator and we can advance further into the building. I go ahead and jump into the pit and I move one square block from the wall. Beside that is going to be a path and Raziel needs to go down there. At the very bottom of that pathway is going to be the next puzzle. It is going to be a fire and block puzzle. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed that very brief machinery puzzle that we got to do because now we are going right back to the greatest thing about this game, more block puzzles. And yeah, we have so many more block puzzles to look forward to later in the game as well, so yay. There is also a path down here that is not going to be important until the puzzles are solved. If you go down that path now, there is going to be a closed gate blocking your progress. So instead, Raziel needs to go ahead and start moving around some blocks. There is not going to be a lot open to interpretation about this puzzle. Just drag the blocks with the burning flames on top of them along the clearly visible path. Once you drag them most of the way down the path, wooden beams are going to catch fire from the flames that you are dragging. That will cause the beams to collapse, and we need to do that for all 4 of them. I also recommend just continuing to drag the flaming square blocks as far down the path as you can. Now you can only drag them as far as the ledge, but you may as well go ahead and do this and get them as far as you possibly can for part 2 of the puzzle. And speaking of the parts of this puzzle, part 1 ends when all the beams have fallen. Then the platform elevator is going to collapse to the same lower floor as you. So that is what I want to try and make happen for right now. And yeah, earlier I was joking around about the block puzzles. I definitely think there are a bit too many in this game, but I don't hate them as much as I might imply. Overall, I really do enjoy this game. It's just one of those moments where the puzzles can kind of drag out some parts, although if you know exactly what you're doing, it's not really going to take you too long to solve them, so they're not really that big of a deal. Although I'm going to exaggerate and make them seem like a big deal, they're not. Although they are definitely something I like to poke fun at. And alright, we are down to the very last beam that we need to set on fire, and then we get to access the next part of the puzzle. When that happens, that's when part 2 of the puzzle begins, and part 2 requires you to drag the flaming square blocks onto the platform, and into the corners of the centermost stage. All 4 of the blocks are going to act like a key, and when each of them is in place, the center stage is going to collapse, and down there the only direction we have left to go is back down the path that was previously gated off. Only now the gate is going to be opened up, and this is going to lead us to the arena where the first boss fight is going to take place. And while Raziel is trying to finish up this puzzle, I'll go ahead and point out an odd fact about this area. The way that Raziel is going right now, doing all these crazy puzzles with the machinery, the blocks, the fire, all of it, that is the only way to get to the arena where you fight that boss. And once you are in that arena, there's no other way to exit. So one path is both the only entry point and the only exit point. And this has given me some odd Resident Evil vibes where people had to go through incredibly crazy puzzles just to access one room that would give you a puzzle that you had to do for another room, and then another room, and then another room, and then another room. And now I'm thinking to myself, man, this really sucks for the boss. Anytime they want to leave this area, they have to go through all this crap over and over again. Like, there has to be a better security system than this.
Show yourself, creature.
Do you not recognize me, brother? Am I so changed?
Melchiah?
Yes, brother. You should have stayed where the Master sent you, Raziel. You will find Nosgoth less pleasant than you remember.
What has become of my clan? Answer me, little brother, or I will beat an answer from your horrid lips.
Everyone is afraid, sibling. You awake to a world of fear. These times of change are so unsettling. Do you think I feel no revulsion for this form? Do you believe for a moment that our Lord would risk his empire upon an upstart inheritance?
Enough riddles. What are you saying?
You are the last to die.
As you can see, attacking Melchiah head-on does not do any damage to him. He usually just laughs at you, although if you strike him in his back just right, he may cry out in pain. Again, it does not actually damage Melchiah, but that does happen to be a trophy if you do make him cry out. And I am trying to earn it here. And Melchiah is just not wanting to cooperate with me here, constantly trying to face me and not giving up his back. And got it. Okay, time to get serious. To beat Melchiah, we have to use the environment. That is going to be a common theme in most of the game's boss battles. In this arena, there are going to be gates made of sharpened bars. The gates can be opened with levers, so you go to one of them, you open up the gate, and then you hold it open until Melchiah crawls underneath it. Then we are going to take inspiration from the French Revolution and we guillotine Melchiah. There are going to be 2 of these gates, and we need to make use of both of them. After Melchiah breaks through the first gate you stab him with, you need to go over to the next one. And then you sit and wait with that gate open until he does the exact same thing. You go ahead and stab him one more time with the gate. And after that, a lever is going to become dislodged by Melchiah's throne. When that happens, you need to manipulate Melchiah so that he alters his permeability to pass through the bars in the center of the stage. That way he enters the cage in the middle of the room, and as soon as Melchiah is inside of there, go ahead and rotate that loosened lever and then enjoy the show. But yes, probably unsurprisingly, this puzzle game prioritizes problem solving to beat most of the bosses over using outright combat.
Tell me, Melchiah, where can I find Kain?
The Master is beyond your reach, Raziel. He makes himself known when he sees fit, not when commanded.
Raziel.
Am I reduced to this? A ghoul? A fratricide?
Elevated, Raziel, not reduced. Consuming Melchiah's soul has endowed you with a new gift. Insubstantial barriers such as these are no impediment to you in the spectral realm. Will yourself to pass through, and you shall.
After beating Melchiah, I believe the fastest way out of the Necropolis is to just go ahead and pause your game for a moment, save the game, quit the game, and go all the way back to the start menu. Whenever you're there, go ahead and load that game that you just saved. Then once you load up, you're going to start where you began back at the very beginning of the game, inside the Elder God's chamber back in the Underworld. Then you were just one room away from a warp gate, and then you can go wherever you want in about a minute or less.
With Melchiah's gift, your way is opened. Return to the seat of Kain's ill-omened empire. Its sterile silence has secrets yet to unveil.
And alright, the Elder God has clued us in, and we need to make it all the way back to the Sanctuary of the Clans. we are just going to run all the way up this passageway to the warp gate room, and then we are going to use the warp gate to reach the Lake of the Dead. That is the closest point to the Sanctuary of the Clans. It's going to be a pretty short walk once we get there. That is definitely faster than walking back through the Necropolis, Raziel's old territory, the Lake of the Dead, and so on. Reloading the game is exactly what I did in this playthrough, but I did do some stuff off screen between when I beat Melchiah and when I returned to the Elder God's Chamber. I used Melchiah's gift to pass through bars in the Spectral Realm to get a glyph that grants me a new force push attack. I also picked up some relics along the way that can increase my health if I get enough of them. If you are curious where to get these optional items, I have separate videos covering that, and I'll be sure to add those links in the description. And alright, I took the warp gate to the Lake of the Dead and I made that quick walk that I was talking about all the way back to the Sanctuary of the Clans. That is where Kain's throne is going to be, at the base of the Pillars of Nosgoth. We could not get inside this building before, but there is a barred gate that we could pass through courtesy of Melchiah's gift. So once he is in the Spectral Realm, Raziel can pass through the bars no problem, and we finally get to go say hello to the man who killed Raziel. There would normally be a health artifact here, but I have already picked that up during my cutaway after Melchiah's fight. I do show that in the health artifact video. And we make our way to a bridge on top of a little pond. When we go into the physical world, there are going to be 2 vampires on the bridge. I always just run immediately at them, and then I use the force glyph in order to push away both vampires so they land inside the water. And I've also got a separate video covering how to find all of the glyphs as well, so yeah, that can be pretty useful. Oh, it's also an achievement if you manage to kill 2 different vampires at the same time using 1 force push. If I did not already have it, I would have gotten it just then. After you kill them though, the doors to the building open up entirely, and then Raziel can just go into the Spectral Realm and pass through all the bars, until he's eventually directly in front of Kain's throne room. I did make sure to go ahead and fully heal before entering the main building. That way, whenever I'm done passing through all the bars on my way to the throne room, I can just go ahead and shift back into the material realm and go ahead and face off against Kain. There's nothing really threatening inside of here, so it's a pretty calm walk all the way to that confrontation. Which I should mention, there's actually an achievement if you manage to get through the entire Kain battle without taking any damage. I've already gotten that achievement, so I can't really get it again, but I'm still going to go ahead and try to go damageless in this fight. Alright, we are here, and now Raziel finally gets his encounter with Kain.
Raziel. Kain. The abyss has been unkind.
I am your creation, Kain. Now, as before, you criticize your own work. What have you done with my clan, degenerate? You have no right. What I have made, I can also destroy, child. Damn you, Kain! You are not God! This act of genocide is unconscionable!
Conscience? You dare to speak to me of conscience? Only when you have felt the full gravity of choice should you dare question my judgment. Your lifespan is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advisedness of my every deed? Can you even begin to conceive what action you would take in my position?
I would choose integrity, Kain.
Look around you, Raziel. See what has become of our empire. Witness the end of an age. The clans scattered to the corners of Nosgoth. This place has outlasted its usefulness. As have you.
The Soul Reaver, Kain's ancient blade, older than any of us and 1,000 times more deadly. The legends claimed that the blade was possessed and thrived by devouring the souls of its victims. For all our bravado, we knew what it meant when Kain drew the Soul Reaver in anger. It meant you were dead.
Kain is going to teleport all around the throne room into one of 3 positions, and once he is there, he starts charging up a powerful spell. The first position it goes to seems to always be behind us, but the next two positions can vary a little bit depending on where exactly you are standing whenever his teleport is happening.
So it unfolds, and we are a step closer to our destinies.
I swore I saw a glint of satisfaction in Kain's eye when the Soul Reaver was destroyed. I did not understand the game that Kain was playing, but I knew the finishing move.
From this moment and ever afterward, you and this blade are inextricably bound. Soul Reaver and Reaver of Souls, your destinies are intertwined. By destroying the sword, you have liberated it from its corporeal prison and restored it to its true form, a radiant blade, its energy unbound. No longer a physical blade, it can only manifest itself in the material realm when your strength is fully restored. Once manifest, it will sustain you.
What are you, little soul? Another of Kain's creatures come to taunt this bound spectre.
I did not intend to disturb your rest.
Rest. A body is needed for sleep. Flesh and bones are required to recline. No, child. All I may do is watch and remember, ceaselessly conscious as this wretched world's history unfurls. Ghastly past, insufferable future, are they one and the same? Am I always here?
How have you come to haunt these pillars?
Kain refused the sacrifice. The Pillar of Balance, corrupted to its core, stands as a monument to his blind ambition. Now these pillars serve only to bind me here, my prison and eternal home, thanks to the avarice of your master, Kain.
That bastard can claim no allegiance from me.
Then we share a common foe, Raziel. Return here when you have need. Ariel remembers what others have forgotten. Far in the eastern mountains, a stifled titan stands in mute surrender, unwilling host to a parasitic swarm.
And alright, that is the cryptic clue that Ariel is going to leave behind for us. So I could just say that Ariel is a ghost who is betrayed by Kain and is now willing to help out Raziel because of it, and that would be a factual statement. Like, I think that would be sufficient enough to make sense for her minor role in this game. Although if you want a more detailed explanation about who she is, I will try my best to condense that, but this is a franchise that has a bunch of lore and it tends to go pretty deep. So that may not be super easy for me to do, but I am going to go ahead and give that a try. So Ariel used to be a balanced guardian, but was murdered and her ghost now haunts the pillars. Guardians in this world are like representatives for different concepts of life like death, time, nature, conflict, and so on. For every guardian, there is a pillar, and those pillars are the same ones that are currently being used for Kain's throne. When Ariel died, her love interest went insane and he telepathically attacked the remaining guardians. That mental attack drove them all mad and corrupted them. That also corrupted the pillars that were linked to them. That is visually represented by the pillars turning black. Long after her death, Kain was newly turned into a vampire by Mortanius, the Guardian of Death, and whenever Kain shows up at the pillars, Ariel convinces him to help her out with the corruption issue. To do that, Kain had to go around and kill all the remaining Guardians. By doing that, whenever a Guardian is killed, their role is passed on to somebody else who is born at the exact same time as their death. So the role would then go on to somebody else who was not corrupt, and that would also end up fixing their pillar in the process. Kain goes one by one through all the Guardians until only the balanced Guardian is remaining, so he had to figure out who replaced Ariel. But it turns out that Kain was born at the same time that Ariel died, so he was unknowingly the balanced Guardian the entire time. So then Kain had a choice. He could kill himself and then purify the last remaining pillar, and then also present the world with newly non-corrupted Guardians, or he could refuse the sacrifice and keep himself alive. And as you can tell, Kain is still alive, so he did in fact refuse the sacrifice. He refused to kill himself, so the pillar is still corrupt, which is actually the reason why the one pillar is still black at the very center of all of them. And because the corruption never truly ended, Ariel could never leave. Now Raziel is around, and she goes from being Kain's old advisor to now advising Raziel. I'll go back to her from time to time to get clues about every major battle that's going to be coming up because she has unique dialogue for every boss battle in the game, with the exception of Melchiah in that first fight with Kain. And there is a trophy for listening to all the advice she can give you, so I will be doing that in this playthrough. Oh, and also the Elder God has a little piece of information for us as well, so let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say.
Your brother Zephon's keep lies far to the east, beyond the ruins that greeted your first exit from the Underworld. He and his brood have cocooned themselves in a derelict cathedral, having murdered its human guardians.
And alright, that seems like a pretty good stopping point for this first part of my playthrough of Soul Reaver. We are a little bit over an hour into the playthrough now, and Raziel managed to defeat Melchiah, and he also managed to survive fighting against Kain. After that fight, he even got himself a very nice spirit sword, and throughout this entire journey, he has been advised by the Elder God, and this episode is ending with him getting one more advisor, the former Balanced Guardian, Ariel. In the very next episode, Raziel is going after another one of his brothers. This time it's going to be Zephon, and he is going to be hiding out inside of an old cathedral that him and his vampire clan have taken over. So that should be a pretty interesting one. Until then though, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to check out the other things I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I'm going to try and post the remaining episodes of this playthrough over the next few weeks, but besides that, I also have playthroughs of other games like the remakes of Resident Evil 1 and 2. I also played through the remaster of Crash Bandicoot, and I also have a bunch of videos related to Mortal Kombat, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check that out. But no matter what you choose to do, thank you for checking out this video again. I hope you enjoyed it, take care, and hopefully I see you next time.